background, high school, family structure.
Okay. My name is Epperson. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland.
Okay.
Prince George's County, Maryland is actually one of the richest Black counties in the United States. And I always tell people that because it's something to kind of be prideful of, especially considering, like, I feel like I am privileged. And it's not nothing to brag about necessarily, but it definitely has shaped how I am and how I view things. I have both my parents in my life. They're still married, and they're my best friends, quite frankly. In PG County, most of the families in PG County look like mine. 2-parent households, Black and successful. So in my community specifically, my dad's a military vet from the Air Force. He was a senior master sergeant. And then my mom works for the White House. And so our neighbors are firefighters and lieutenants and whatever may have you. My aunt actually lives down the street, and both of my aunt and my uncle are both police officers. And so like the demographics from where I live is completely different to like Tuskegee or a lot of other places, because where I live, people don't really have such a disdain for police officers, whereas down here it's a completely different perspective on police officers. I can definitely understand why people don't like police officers, but the people back home that don't like police officers don't like police officers because they get in trouble with police officers. Whereas like people down here who are like law-abiding citizens don't even like police officers. And I completely understand why. It just shows you like how different my world is versus the rest, outside areas. Because like I live in PG County, which is I live in Upper Marlboro, which is 25 minutes outside of the city, outside of DC. Whereas I'm about an hour from Baltimore. The climate in Baltimore is completely different from where I live.
Why?
Yeah, because Baltimore, it's so funny because people are like, when I say I'm from Maryland, people are, oh, you're from Baltimore? I'm like, no, not at all, not in any capacity. And it's not even to make fun of Baltimore, but Baltimore is really a war zone of its own in comparison to the rest of the DMV. Because Baltimore, it's just rough. Like, it has its nice areas, but it's really just the harbor. Like, that's it. Baltimore, I remember when the Freddie Gray riots were going on, and people were like, look at what they did to the city. Look how bad it looks. No, that's how Baltimore looks. Baltimore looks like that. The school systems are rough. The people are rough. The way they have gangs in Baltimore. And that's not even something we haven't. Like, DC doesn't have gangs.
You ever seen The Wire?
I haven't, but I know Idris Elba's on it.
Yeah,
and it takes place in Baltimore.
That's the only illustration of Baltimore that the rest of the country has ever seen. So that was, the baddest.
Yeah, Baltimore, I don't venture into Baltimore because of my perception of Baltimore, but I can't speak on how bad it is because I'm not from there. But I'm very aware that there, in my opinion, is nothing. There's nothing to go there for. Like, I have a friend from Chicago, a really close friend from Chicago, and she was telling me, she had an internship in DC, so we were hanging out during the summertime, and she was telling me how in DC, in our hoods, we still have community centers and restaurants and bars and clubhouses and all these things to do, whereas where the part of Chicago she's from, there's nothing like that. The hood's the hood. In order to work at a solid place, in order to find something to do with your friends, you have to go outside the hood and you have to get on a train or whatever may have you. It's not like that in DC. I just feel like my area, like, as much as I complain about DC and Maryland and Virginia, we have so many advantages in comparison to other parts of the United States, because on top of just having great, successful Black communities, like, safeties, and like this year specifically, DC has had a terrible murder rate, but for the most part, it's a safe community. Like, the hoods are safe for the most part. You're not going to get messed with, during broad daylight, or it ain't no problems. The only reason why we call our hoods the hoods is simply because they're lower income, but the hood behavior doesn't really exist in a lot of those places.
Going to your high school, and you went to high school in PG County?
I went to high school in PG County, and I hated going to high school in PG County. Because even though PG County is one of the richest Black communities in the United States, the school system is terrible. And it's not because of the teachers, because I've had some amazing Black teachers who care very much about their students, but the problem was, I don't know what the problem was, because when I would say it was the funding, teacher would tell me, like, statistically, it's not the funding. But maybe it's because the funding isn't in the right places, because our schools would be deteriorating. Like, they would be in such, like, we're old. I went to Frederick Douglass High School, which is in Upper Marlboro, and it's the first black high school. It was the first high school that they allowed black people to go to in PG County. Now, PG County used to be white, extremely white, but, you know, as gentrification in DC was happening, a lot of people had to move out of DC, and so they got moved to PG County, which is right outside the city, and so that eventually became, you know, a black hub, and so we pushed all the white people out. They want to live around us, but right. So my school looks the same that it did when it was first built in the 30s, 40s, whenever it was built. It looks the exact same.
What was the demographic at your school?
Demographic majority black. We had 2 or 3 white people, maybe. Did we have any? I don't think we had any Latinos or Asian people. It was majority black, just like my county.
And were they all families at a higher class, like middle class and up?
We had lower. So we had lower class, and we had middle and upper middle class students at my school, because I think I'm middle class, but I've had people tell me I'm upper middle class in comparison to, you know, because how I grow up is different. My perspective, I think how I live is normal. I feel like I live at the basics, the standards, you feel me? But in comparison to how other people grow up, I can see why some people might consider me upper middle class. So the reason why there were lower class people that went to my school was because people would put their aunt's address as their own, just so they can go to school in a better environment. Prince George, the reason why I said I hated going to school in Prince George's County is because I felt like there were just so little opportunities, specifically at my school, because I didn't go to one of the newer schools.
Like a magnet or...
not even a magnet. Like, there were schools like it's like, my school was an IB school, but because IB it's some sort of advanced classes. But because I transferred into that school, because at first I went to school in Virginia. I'm from Maryland, but my parents wanted to try out Virginia to see, you know, if they liked that environment better, but they didn't like the commute. So we moved back to Maryland, and I transferred in. And if you transfer in, you can't just jump into the IB program. So all their students aren't even in IB classes. And so it's kind of a weird, it was just a weird climate. It wasn't, you had no opportunities if you weren't in the IB program. And that was my school. And, you know, you had other schools like Wynn Park and Wise and Oxon Hill. They had so many programs, and we just had nothing. There was nothing for the artists. And I've always been drawn to artistic movements. There's no sort of activism. There's no, and I feel like in my area, we feel like we don't need activism because we're majority black, and a good portion of us are well off. But the fact that our school systems are terrible shows that our parents don't go to PTA meetings. The students, we don't fight for anything. We accept, and that's a bad quality of black people. We just accept things. Like, we barely would have computers in the school. And I didn't like PG County also because we had to wear uniforms. And I understand why, because and where I live, if you didn't have, you know, a certain type of shoes, if you weren't wearing real polo, like, you would get clowned. So I understand why we had uniforms, but at the same time, it was just very suppressing as an artistic person to have to dress in the same thing every day. So I actually often would get in trouble because, like, we were supposed to wear burgundy polo shirts, and I would just wear like a burgundy shirt. It had ruffles on it. It would be whatever I wanted it to be, but it'd be burgundy, and we had to wear khaki pants. I'd wear khaki overalls, khaki whatever, because at the end of the day, what y'all gonna do? So that's a terrible way to look at it, but Prince George's County was complacent. Maybe that's because it's not that I wanted more, because Prince George's County is in theory, a great place to live in because there's not high crime. You know, like, I feel comfortable the most around my people, and Prince George's County is black, you know, so I guess it was still moving very slow. Like, life was still moving a little too slow for me in PG County, which is why I chose to come here. And now that I think about it, that doesn't make sense because the Tuskegee specifically, I can't speak for all the South, Tuskegee specifically, living here is slow living.
Slower pace
living.
But you came from that area, the DMV, is a higher pace than the average of the United States, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm so confused on where I want to live, because I can't imagine myself living in like a bustling area like New York. Maybe I would have to move in the inner city of DC, but I don't, you know, like, I can't do this. I can't do Alabama. but I don't think I could do New York either. So it's like, where is the middle ground?